Oh, hello old-timers and newcomers. I am Cole Scratches, and thank you for joining me to take another look at what I found. You know, sometimes I just get so tired. It's like I wake up, turn on the web, and then the whole day is ruined. Days like this, I like to do what all horror files with a taste for the exceedingly depraved and violent do, after so long repressing my most carnal impulses. I looked for a comedy to cheer myself up. Ooh! This one has a clown on it!
Pick it up. Pick up the box. Pick it up. Pick up the box. Pick it up. Pick up the box. Pick it up. Pick up the box.
Best compared to a fruitcake sent to you by snail mail from your creepy Uncle Jason at the House of Blum. Mockingbird's reception was less than lukewarm. Reviews generally put it somewhere below average, and the average audience isn't much better. 3 cameras arrive at 3 households and tether the people to an anthology written by a madman. Only one instruction: stop filming and people die. Which sounds kind of dumb. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with frantic human beings before, but they tend not to listen. Sounds kind of cool, though. I'm just hoping it figures out a way to portray this believably. So, I suppose there's no use delaying this anymore. So, let's switch on Mockingbird and see if the critics know what the fuck they're talking about. Ooh, we're getting a naptime story? The film opens to sweeping shots of nighttime suburbia, overlaid with Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. The overall feeling is pretentious and silly, like it's trying to be highbrow and thinks juxtaposing culture with murder is automatically scary. I mean, who made this? A bunch of kids? Hey, I'm sorry. I actually like this opening. Sure, it's a bunch of artsy nonsense, but it helps to establish what kind of lunatic we're dealing with. They're a narcissist who consider themselves more intelligent than everyone else, and their needlessly complicated murders are all about showing it. They attempt to create artistic shots, but aren't skilled enough to do it masterfully, reflected by their shaking hands. It's someone who believed themselves to be Hannibal Lecter and acts on it. Had it been a traditional film, I would have held this against it, but as it's supposedly showing a real person, I'm willing to accept that a deranged man would be deluded enough to think of themselves like this, while failing to live up to it. I'm not saying they would be successful, I am saying I could believe in people who see themselves like this and are mad enough to act on it. We move on to branches. A lot of branches. Yep, those are branches. I suppose it looks kind of chilly, and the sound actually reminds me of ice crinkling. So is this an ASMR video, or... Ah, here we go!
Hey, handsome.
Okay, that's a serial killer if ever I saw one. Tom, played by Todd Stashwick, assumes the camera with remarkably good image quality for the 90s is a prize from one of the many contests his wife enters. Emmy, played by Audrey Marie Anderson, is incredulous, but accepts it without much thought while Tom keeps filming. Here's how I know Tom is the killer. His story for how he got the camera is weak. He keeps filming his wife in her underwear, which I do appreciate, and he looks like a discount Anton Chigurh. Not to mention, Anderson played Lila Michaels in the Arrow TV series. Meanwhile, Stashwick was Dr. Draken in the Kim Possible movie. Obviously, he's the bad guy. Elsewhere, another victim unpacks her random gift. Beth, played by Alexandra Lydon. She doesn't question much why a running camera was left in a package for her, but seems very happy with the odd gift, and even takes it on a tour of her house.
Shall we take a tour of the place? Let's go.
Okay, so here is a complaint that a lot of people throw at found footage films, and 9 times out of 10 I don't think they have any idea what they're talking about, but this film is an exception. Why are they filming? Logistically, it's to establish the bullet points of the film, like how many victims there are, where they live, their characteristics, but the story also needs to give a reason for why they're keeping the camera running. They will be given a very good reason later, turn it off and they die, but at this point in time they're filming a bunch of nonsense for no reason other than, hey, got a camera. Which at no point is questioned. I realize this is set in the 90s, but I'd like to believe even back then, if someone received a package from a complete stranger and it contained a video camera that was running when you opened the package, you would be creeped out enough to call the police. I'm not saying the police would actually do anything, they have other issues to deal with. But I kind of expect the recipients to not wanna play around with the thing. Which is what they do. At the very least there were interesting things happening around Tom for him to film, but when Beth takes the camera on a tour of her apartment, there is nothing whatsoever going on. She is literally talking to the thing like it's a new pet, and not a terrifying invasion of her privacy. Like the narcissistic serial killer, I can believe people this stupid do exist, but that doesn't make the film any better. For the better part of 3 minutes, both Beth and Tom keeps filming their home life, establishing that Tom has it pretty good with a loving family and daughters he cares for, and Beth is pretty lonely without much of anything going on. This continues until Gary, played by Colby French, shows up to take the little tykes out roller skating for the night.
Look at that butt, look at that butt. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I see why you married her. He's a douche with taste for attractive women. Fucking scumbag, murdering sexist pig. Elsewhere, Beth is still on the phone with her mother when that same moonlight sonata wafts in from the house across the yard, and it seems as if the camera simply won't turn off.
I think I broke it.
Okay, this could explain why they kept filming inane bullshit all the time, if neither camera can be turned off, and all the jump cuts, that could be the killer editing it all together after the fact. The issue is the cameras record on videotape, and as far as I know, a standard high-8 tape, it can only hold about 2.5 hours worth of footage, and Tom, he has had his camera running for way longer than that. Unless it's Beth's camera specifically that is broken. Since Tom is obviously the killer, then it makes sense for him to want to have more control over his camera, so maybe he's just turning it off and on again when it suits him. That murderous, manipulative bastard. I bet he eats babies as well, the pig.
Oh, dude.
Hello. This is Leonard, played by Barack Hardley. Like everyone else, he too assumes the camera is a prize from a competition, only he is given a further set of instructions.
Congratulations, you have been entered in a once-in-a-lifetime contest. One night, one prize, one game.
With a cash pot of $10,000 on the line, the slightly frazzled Leonard gets to work that he may finally become something more than a useless burden in his mother's house. And for that reason, I identify with him. With the clown, the family, and the woman engaged, it's time to raise the curtains on this dark and stormy night. Seemingly at the same time, both Tom and Beth get another package, this one more unnerving. 3 notes doodled as if by a child, urging them to keep filming. A picture of all of them taken from a distance, and an invitation to 1805 Mockingbird. Still taken in strides, at the most Emmy is annoyed there isn't anything else, and Beth is refusing to call the police despite her overbearing mother urging her to, before the line cuts off. Some people deserve to die because they're evil. Some people deserve to die to repent. And then there are those who are just butt-fucking stupid. I wasn't being a blockhead when I called Leonard a clown, as indeed a full clown suit is delivered to his mom's apartment for Leonard to wear for this night's escapades.
I am Leonard, this is awesome. I'm gonna put on big old shoes. Help me get some girlfriends, yes it will.
I'm not gonna deny clowns do get girlfriends, but how many chuckle bunnies are you gonna attract looking like Captain Spaulding snorting royal blue? Leonard has been led on his own adventure, separate from the family and Beth. A final hammer blow to the safety of their middle-class neighborhood. A tape is delivered to their address.
The art film.
I know.
It's really good.
Really interesting.
The tape is the same gruesome video from the opening of this film, but this is the extended edition with never-before-seen footage. Footage of their home at night, footage of the lot of them asleep. And so the show begins. Tom can't be at 2 places at once. So the videos must have been shot at different dates! Damn that gaslighting serial killer pig Tom! Thunderously pummeled the door drum from the outside, panicking the victims before a phone call frightened them even further. A voice, as if pre-recorded, tells Emmy to hold the camera, and Beth to pick up hers as well. How does he know? Is he watching them? Ah! Oh, we're back to him. Yes, while Tom, Emmy and Beth are trapped in a home invasion, Leonard is arguably suffering even more as he is forced into the nightmare of social awkwardness. Having humiliated himself in a women's bathroom, he's left another note with further instructions. Back with Beth, she gathers enough courage to leave her hiding spot, even as the power goes out and Igor Stravinsky's Firebird plays from somewhere. Somewhere outside. Stellan Skarsgård, go home! You're too good for this film! I like slumming it now and again. You live in a sewer! It doesn't look like Tom. He must have lost weight and dyed his hair! The show is yet too fun for our artiste to reveal himself and settle for a jovial shock to scare Beth back into the house. Tom and Emmy have yet to leave as well, with Tom opting to defend the sanctity of his home, as any red-blooded American would. Leonard, meanwhile, continues his mission, and enlisting the help of 2 former friends, he gets beaten up according to instruction. Tom and Emmy are less obedient, with Tom wanting to fight their enemy face to face.
Just because they're grown-ups doesn't mean they know
How is that possible?
Even mommies ain't daddies.
How can they see what we're doing?
There's a transmitter.
What? A what?
That red light is a transmitter.
I was going to immediately call bullshit on this. As far as I knew, no camera in the 90s had the capability of transmitting footage wirelessly. But I did a bit of research, and it is ever so slightly murky. In Japan, in 1987, there was a video camera that could be sold together with a transmitter. But that camera wasn't exactly consumer-friendly. It could cost as much as $6,000, or the equivalent thereof. Not to mention, that camera, it stored its footage on... It was a still video camera, so it stored its footage on floppies. It didn't use video cassettes like these cameras do. And I tried finding pictures of the transmitter in question, but I couldn't find any. I did find pictures of the camera in question, and it looks nothing like the cameras that these guys are using. These guys seem to be using Canon LX1 cameras. And... yeah, they did take videotapes, but they couldn't transmit video. If I had a rack, I could maybe stretch my suspension of disbelief to such an extent that I can accept that somebody jerry-rigged a transmitter onto these cameras. But I think it's much simpler and much more reasonable to assume that the reason the killer knows what's going on, what these people are doing, is because Tom is the killer. Fucking bastard Tom. He made me spend an hour looking all of this up! Knocking and pummeling echoes around them. He must be using hidden speakers to pull this off! Suddenly alone for seemingly no reason, Emmy tries reasoning with her tormentors, offering apologies and jewelry so they will leave her alone. Not her and Tom. Her. And for that she deserves to die. Leonard is psyching himself up for his next assignment, talking to the camera about how far out of his comfort zone all of this is to him.
I mainly eat. I complain. I put up with my mother. And, masturbate. So, those 4 things are my life?
Yeah, so that's a great life. I'm not depressed. It's impossible to tell how many are even out there in the storm. It's like they're everywhere at once, but know how to stay out of sight. Like ghosts walking through their walls. Glass shatters in the distance, and Tom leaves Emmy to investigate. But she can't stay alone for long, so with the camera in her hand, she follows him.
Don't come in here. Stay back, Emmy.
Oh, God! Oh, no!
They killed him.
No, he clearly just covered a toy in some ketchup. Even Tom isn't evil enough to kill a cat. Or is he? Where's the cat, Tom? Beth, too, suffers psychological torture under the siege of her apartment. From outside, as if from a speaker system, her mother's voice carries on the echoing wind. With no one coming to help her, she listens to her mother's assurances, mocking her from the outside. How long has she been surveilled for the monsters to have recorded that conversation? Tom and Emmy received another package, this time threatening their children. Painted in clown makeup, they're paraded around, the makeup being all too familiar. Wait, if this is the first time Leonard has worn that makeup, how did they get footage of him wearing it when the camera hasn't stopped recording all night? Unless it was all recorded a different night. Did you kill Leonard, Tom? Beth too receives a package, though her circumstances are far different. The man in a suit is patiently waiting outside, staring at her through the window. Again the speaker system echoes, urging her to pick up the box in his lap. Is it fear that makes her abandon her safe domicile, or is it foolishness that brings her closer to the figure? Maybe it's the nagging of the speakers burrowing into her mind. Either way, she approaches, finding the ominous figure is nothing but a puppet holding a gift from the madman. Emmy and Tom receive a gift as well, a music box with the same deranged-looking clown holding their children, and a car key hidden inside. Beth is reticent to open her gift, and needs a hand in doing so. With a clue as subtle as a power drill through the air, Tom and Emmy get in their car and drive away. Not to the police station or friends and family, but towards 1805 Mockingbird, hoping to save their children. Beth, meanwhile, has been given a gift. A real gift. A helpful gift. A 6-round revolver and an invitation to come and play. Leonard is still kept busy, though his task is noticeably pleasant. All he needs to do is buy a cake. Seems simple enough.
White cake, red icing, and then a word in the middle.
Okay, what word you want?
Surprise.
The finale draws close as all the actors near the climax. Meteors on a collision course, the family looking for their children, the woman trying to defend herself, and the clown as the guest of honor. All about to impact the same coordinates. 1805 Mockingbird Drive. Oh, and the reason Beth is there is because it's actually her address. She was renting the guest house from the people in the main building, which she has now been invited into, now that she is armed and dangerous, so she can confront her attackers. Why she doesn't just take off down the street, I don't know. Personally, I'd fancy my chances better on the street armed than entering that house. The scene is deliciously set to Mozart's Requiem in D minor, adding a pretentious but frightening atmosphere to the already tense climax. An ocean of translucent red balloons fill every room of the building, turning the scene into a surreal nightmare that's equally disturbing and beautiful. Alas, all things horrifying will not last. With the arrival of Leonard, the music becomes Hall of the Mountain King, followed by Vivaldi's Summer in Presto G minor. I don't actually know what I just said means, but the scene is bathed in this orgy of elaborate fast-paced classical music that makes the whole scene comes off as exaggerated and silly. which may have been intentional. How else do you explain the ridiculousness of what's about to happen? After spending 5 minutes flailing about the latex sea, loudly screaming for anyone to hear them, Tom, Emmy and Beth still manages to surprise one another. For a moment it seems they're about to realize they've been set up, but Beth mistrusts the two strangers in the house. Who's to say they're not the ones who have been torturing her all night? On his end, Leonard waits for a countdown to make his appearance. Tensions are rising, voices grow louder, panic sets in, and finally! Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. What can you do but laugh at this bullshit? It's so stupid, it's actually genius. All of the victims kill each other, with both triggermen firing another shot after they've already been hit to make sure everyone dies. And we are left to assume the killer himself intended for this to happen. So yeah, Tom wasn't the killer, and I was unnecessarily hard on him. But the bastard made me look up camera specs from the 1980s! So, who was the killer? Well, I don't really know. The movie kind of ends here and he's yet to show up, so I assume it was someone we never even saw until now.
Did it work? Are they dead? Did you get the tapes?
The film isn't painful. That's the best way I can put it. It's just really fucking dumb. From the start, the plot is pretty frail. 3 people are sent free cameras and told if they stop filming while they're being tortured, they'll die. When you threaten people, they generally don't listen. They're too busy figuring out how to escape or fight back. And when you tell them they'll be okay if they listen while you're harming them, they definitely won't listen. If I compare it to a bank robbery, that threat is more immediate, with actual guns being pointed at people's heads. Assuming people will listen to you because you threaten them with a videotape doesn't hold up. You might say the characters will do what it's written they'll do, but that's missing the point. If their actions don't feel sensible within the context, in this case a supposedly real event caught on camera, then you've failed at conveying what you intended. You can't just tell your audience that's how it is and expect them to accept it. That's not how art works. I'd be willing to suspend my disbelief if the movie was entertaining enough, and it was fine. I wouldn't say it was boring, but so much of it felt like filler in what could have been a much tighter and more fast-paced thriller. The cameras linger on things that don't matter, and much of the dialogue felt padded in a way that made the characters feel dumber than they were. And even if you'd argue the lingering is a result of the cameras being turned on all the time, it doesn't make sense because, from the murderer's perspective, there was no reason not to cut a lot of this out of the film. I know why it was directed this way though, because even with all the fluff and counting the credits, the film is barely an hour and 20 minutes long. Excuse me while I rant a bit about runtimes. Traditionally, a feature film is between an hour and a half or 2 hours, because that tends to be how long it takes to tell a decent story. The more complicated and nuanced the story, the more runtime it needs to convey this. Even with 3 different stories all told at the same time, I am certain Mockingbird could have been an hour long, or maybe even just 50 minutes, and nothing would have been lost, because that's how simple this narrative is. It's a shame because once you remove the fluff, the story isn't actually that bad. It's senseless and a bit all over the place, but the actual sequence of events in each narrative is intriguing in its own right. Beth opening up her garage to find the balloons, Emmy almost being stabbed, and of course everything Leonard gets up to. It's all interesting and made me wonder what would happen next. Unfortunately, with the way it kept bouncing from story to story, I kept losing interest whenever the movie gained it. Right up until the ending. That fucking ending. I have no problem with the idea of kids being murderers. I think most kids show signs of psychopathy up until a certain age, and it is actually a horrifying idea for the very people any mother or father would care about more than anything in the world to want them dead. But the idea that a bunch of kids could have planned and executed a plan this complicated flawlessly is bad. It's just plain bad. The acting and characters were nothing special. On occasion I felt Anderson and Lydon were attempting to become scream queens with their wailing, but beyond that I think the actors just turned up for a paycheck, delivered a passable performance and then walked off the stage. The only one who felt like they were having fun was Barack, and in my opinion his character was the strongest. Beth was a lonely college student and Tom and Emmy were a family without much character. But Leonard was a down-on-his-luck underdog, offered a chance to become a winner only to be left slowly dying with no explanation. It's tragic, but even then the film didn't focus enough on him for me to care. Mockingbird is a bad film with some kind of cool ideas that unfortunately got watered down by pointless nonsense. It's got the Blumhouse brand of polish to what could have been ugly scenes, but it's overall weighed down by the weaknesses of its story and direction. I sentence Mockingbird to a 4 on a scale of 11. Thank you all for watching. I have been Cole Scratches, and I hope you will see me again next time to take another look at what I found.